leads and sales for them. They'd get booked out in advance. Things on the surface actually looked really good. But here's where things got interesting. You see, some were doing absolutely fantastic. Life was great. They were taking proper holidays. They were able to afford those holidays. Their teams were growing. They were booked 6 to 12 months in advance. They were buying new cars, new vehicles, getting some of the extra toys. But then there were some that were not thriving. They were hurting, struggling. Same leads, same volume, same quality prospects. We weren't getting better leads to some and bad leads to others, but they were broke, working 70, 80 hours a week, and they were still wondering where all the money went. Look, at first we thought they were just bad at sales. We're like, oh, well, they don't have the gift of the gab. So instead, let's just help them more with sales. We'll build the systems for that. So we did. We built the info packs, the lookbooks. We got sales scripts, follow-up processes. We taught our members how to charge for quotes, and we refined and developed that so that every single member could get paid for their professional services. And yes, many closed way more work, but some were still struggling. And this confused us even more. We were like, we're good at this. What's going on? And that's when we had Dave come into the office. Look, back then we had a grimy little cube in an old building along Newmarket, Khyber Pass Road in Auckland. We've since moved out. I'm very happy now. But back then, we sat down at the boardroom table with Dave, myself and Marty, and Dave was a fantastic bloke. Great builder, 17 Master Builder of the Year awards. He's well up to over 40 now, but he looked exhausted at the time. And he said something to us that has changed our business and that of many other businesses that we've worked with ever since. He said, your marketing's working, I'm booked out, I'm busier than ever, I'm in fact turning people away, but I'm broke, I still work crazy hours, and there's less money in the bank account today than there was when I started. I think it would be easier to just go back to me, the dog, and one guy on site. Honestly, this was kind of like pulling a dagger out of the front, because we got Dave all those jobs. We helped him, inadvertently though, build a prison of a business rather than an asset that gave him more time and more money. It was kind of a sucker punch to the ego because we thought we were doing so well. But here's the reality. We said, Dave, can we look at your numbers? Can we pull the curtain back and dig into your financials? That's when the problem became crystal clear. Dave had been taught how to price his jobs by just putting a 15% markup on all of his stuff. And after his overheads actually came off, his team, his insurances, his office costs, his bookkeeper, he was netting maybe only 3% if he was lucky, sometimes less. He was basically working for free, or worse, he was paying for the privilege of working a 70-hour week and building somebody else's dream home. It was that meeting in the boardroom in Khyber Pass Road, amongst a couple of others of members that were doing just as poorly, yet so booked out that we realized in the penny dropped, generating leads isn't enough. Marketing and sales alone is not enough. It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. You can have all the leads, all the work in the world, but if you're not pricing jobs properly and then holding on to that profit through a project, you're just building yourself a busy job with massive liability, stress, and overheads, not a business. So after seeing all the bad stuff that we were creating with Dave and a couple of other good performers and bad performers, we dug into all of the winners that we were working with, those that were absolutely crushing it. They had more time, they had more profitability, they were driving around in the new toys, and it wasn't just for show, it was real wealth. They were doing spec builds, developments, and building other companies without burning the candle at both ends. We invited them all together. We started with some of our first masterminds, our first member events. We pulled the curtain back, we unpacked what was working, and this is what we found. These winners weren't necessarily the best marketers, they weren't actually the best salespeople either, they didn't have the gift of the gab. They had specific systems for pricing and then landing 20% plus gross margin jobs. They had systems to then hold on to that profit through a project. They were actually doing some of the opposite stuff to what the losers or the biggest learners needed to do. And they were doing different things to what most people are taught when they learn the trade to start with. So the members that were doing 20% plus gross profit margin, they could afford great project managers, they could invest into great systems, they could pay their team well, they could pay themselves well, they could take holidays they could actually afford, they could weather the storms when things were going wrong, because let's be fair, everything always goes wrong in construction. We need contingency. And they could actually make the kind of money that made all the risk and liability worthwhile. The other ones, though, the ones that were at less than 20% gross profit margin, closer to 10 to 15, they were trapped, always busy, never profitable. Maybe they'd have a couple of good projects or weeks, but it wasn't consistent. And they were always one bad job away, one bad client, one bad blowout from disaster. So I'd like to say it was one shiny, sunny afternoon, but the reality is over the next 3 to 6 to 9 months, we made a change. We made a decision and we stopped just being a marketing agency. We became the professional builder, a coaching company dedicated to helping residential builders create profitable businesses that give them both more time and more money. And the foundation of everything that we teach and we work with our members on is this. The most important number in your business is your gross profit margin, not your revenue, not how busy you are, not how many jobs you're doing, not even your net profit. your gross profit. And why is this? Well, because from your gross profit, you pay your overheads, the people in your process to buy back your time, and your net profit, the bonus for being a business owner. With good gross profit, everything else becomes easier. You can afford the right team, you can invest in the right growth, the right process, the right systems, you can take time off, you can build true wealth. Take Justin. When he joined, he was working 80 hours a week with 2 teams, no systems. But more critically, he had no financial tracking in place. We didn't know where his money was going. He was busy but not profitable. He had no back costing system, quality control, he had proper estimating process. He couldn't tell if jobs were making or losing money. It was leaving him exhausted, broke, and despite endless hours of work, he had almost no results to show for it. In fact, he was 95 grand in the hole with no real prospects for the next 12 months. But fast forward 9 months of work on the program and using the profit systems that we're going to unpack today, he cleared that 95 grand in debt. He turned a profit. He managed to 4x his revenue. He got healthy cash flow, and he had downward pressure on his overheads. So he wasn't spending money to make money. But like I said before, this method works in big towns, small towns. In fact, it's not just Justin. Over the last 2 decades, we've helped more than 3,100 building company owners across the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, in-person events, online, build their business so that it gives them true wealth. We've run hundreds of these live events for builders all over the world, through Texas, East Coast, West Coast, North Island, South Island, across Australia, and north of the border. In fact, we've built the biggest coaching business for custom home builders in the world, and we have the largest member success team that we know of. Over 45 full-time team members helping our members, plus many others who are advisory coaches. In fact, Justin is one of those people. People that give back to the community to make sure that they see others not make the mistakes that they made themselves. Because a rising tide, it lifts all boats. We've since written the book on this. It's a bestseller in 3 categories, and my business partner, Marty Amos, spent 2.5 years distilling down 21 years worth of learnings and lessons to make sure it was an a la carte menu. You can pick it up, flip to any page, and start learning about how to build a profitable and predictable building company. It's a good read. It's a page turner. It's a bestseller in 3 categories, but it takes a while to read. So what I want to do is I want to condense down in the next 30 minutes and go rapid fire through the absolute highlights on making sure that you can hit 20% gross profit margins in your business. So right now, if you're like most of our members before they joined us, the chances are that you work in big hours, 60, maybe even 80 hours plus per week. You're sacrificing a lot for your business, family time, hobbies, social events, maybe even your health, burning the candle at both ends. Perhaps, like many of our members, you do great, amazing work, but you don't have a great and amazing business yet. You've been taught how to be a great tradesman, and you learnt your trade, but you have not learned how to be a business owner, and you have not learnt the trade of business ownership. I want you to walk away at the end of this workshop knowing exactly what you need to do to boost your profitability, and then be able to take the simplest path forward and know what systems you need to implement along the way and what support structure you will need. But fair warning, these systems aren't for everybody. They're specifically designed for residential building company owners. So if you're doing new homes, custom architectural, if you do remodels, renovations, extensions, additions, if you do prefab or modular, if you do passive housing and maybe general contracting, then this could be for you. But if you're HVAC, plumbing, electrical, or you're looking for a silver magic bullet, there's no such thing, and we don't work with those types of sub-trades. If you actually don't do good work, we don't want to hear from you either. And if you're not interested in trying anything new, you're not coachable, and you're not willing to try new things, then this ain't for you either. But let's cover 3 key things today. The big mistakes that most building company owners are making when it comes to their profitability, how to actually land 20% plus minimum margin projects using the Wow Pack and the presentation of quote as action plan tools, and how to protect these margins through a job using 2 specific profit protection systems that I'll walk you through. Let's get going. So residential construction is a minefield, and everything does go wrong. In fact, over the last 21 years, Marty has distilled down the 5 critical mistakes that keep builders stuck at low margins and working for too little money. These are big mistakes, but you want to reframe them as opportunities to do better. It could be costing you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but that could be ending up back in your back pocket if you take action on the learnings from today. The first one is markup versus margin. This is a killer, and 93% of the people that we talk to at the very beginning don't know the difference, and when they learn about it, are able to save tens of thousands of dollars in the first 12 months. So pause the video now and maybe take a screenshot, but let me walk you through an example. Say you're building $1 million custom home and you sell to the client, and you sell the client on your 20% builder's margin. If the cost to the client is $1 million, that means your 20% builder's profit margin is $200,000 with an $800,000 cost of goods or cost to you, labor, materials, and subtrades. So far, so good. Hopefully this makes sense. But the mistake that we see many builders make is instead of taking 20% of the final cost to the client, so of that $1 million, instead, they just mark up their costs by 20%, assuming that it's the same thing. But here's where it's not. 20% of your $800,000 cost to you is only $160,000, meaning that you would end up, instead of charging the client $1 million, charging them $960,000. Your $800,000 cost to you plus the 20%, which is 160, is 960. That's $40,000 profit that just walked out of the door because we did one simple calculation wrong. We marked up by 20% instead of margin of 20% on the sale price. Now multiply that across all your jobs of the year. If you're doing $3 million in revenue, that mistake is costing you $120,000 per year. In fact, if you want to achieve a 20% gross margin, then your markup costs need to be 25%. Here's a table. Take a screenshot if you want. Imagine what this is costing you over the course of your career. In fact, most builders are leaving a lot of this on the table because they're selling the contract at a builder's margin, yet they're applying a markup. As you can see, the difference between a 20% markup is around 3.3%. Crazy when extrapolated over your career. Now, the next big opportunity, number 2, is trying to scale a lack of profit, poor cash flow, and low margins. As we see it all the time. A builder comes to us and says, I need more leads, I need to grow, I want to go from 3 to 5 to 10 to $15 million. So we look at their numbers, and they're making 12% gross profit margins. After their overheads, it might only be 3 or 4% net. And we have to say to them, the last thing you want to do is grow and scale. You don't need more work. You need to plug the holes in the bucket before we turn on the taps. This is why. Growing businesses consume a lot of cash. And as you grow, your overheads are only going to go up. Maybe you hire an office manager, a contracts administrator, a projects manager. There's a new vehicle on the road. There's new insurances. You might decide you want a whiz-bang website. Or you want to get some video testimonials done, and there's more overheads in there. And if you're not making decent margin on your jobs now, doing more jobs just means you're losing money faster. You'll be running around like a headless chicken, hiring more guys to keep up, and every job just digs you deeper into the hole. Before you know it, you're working 7 days a week, stressed out to your eyeballs, and somehow making less money now than you were when you started. You can't scale chaos. You can't scale lack of profits, poor cash flow, low margins. You just end up running faster on that builder's hamster wheel, working harder and not getting anywhere. Fix your profitability first and then grow and scale. Opportunity number 3 is wearing every hat and being the bottleneck in your business. The bottleneck is normally at the top of the bottle, just like the owner is at the top of the business. How many of you are pricing every job, going to every site every morning, doing your own project management, managing all the team, chasing every single change order and variation, dealing with all the client conversations, your phone's ringing off the hook, and you're answering emails at 9 p.m. every night? Look, here's what happens when you do everything in your business. You can't grow. You can't take time off. You can't focus on the high value activities that actually move the business forward. The more valuable you are to your business, the less valuable your business is to you. When you're stretched thin, things fall between the cracks. You forget that invoice. You can't put downward pressure on the guys to make sure that we hit milestones. You can't follow up those leads. Make sure we get efficient and accurate and good pricing from all your subs. And it often means that you get squeezed for margin, for profit, and for time. These little slips, they add up to big profit losses. The secret here is to install proper systems across every area of the business, from marketing and sales to pricing for profit, contract signing checklists, site setup checklists, through a project, when purchase orders, quality control, daily stand-ups, site meetings, toolbox meetings, into post-construction, code of compliance, handing the job over, making sure we get a testimonial or a case study, and then updating the entire marketing. All right, opportunity or mistake number 4 is reinventing the wheel on every new system. Cool, we need systems across the business, but every week I talk to builders who are trying to figure things out from scratch. They're trying to work out how to structure their wow info packs, how to capture variations better, how to do scheduling, how to do back costing process, how to run their toolbox meetings, everything A to Z. And they're starting from scratch, spending weeks, sometimes months trying to work it out themselves. Meanwhile, thousands of builders have literally solved these problems already. They've created the systems, they've already tested what works, and ultimately what doesn't. So why would you reinvent the wheel of a system that already exists that you can pick up, plug, and play into your business? Take one of our members, Leon, for example. He took the preliminary contract agreements to make sure that he could charge for his quotes. He closed 7 from 7, and it stopped him working 30 hours on tire kickers and time wasters. These prospects would just pick his brain. He'd do full takeoffs, and then half the time they would just ghost him or end up price checking him against another builder. You don't need to figure this all out on yourself. Instead, you just need proven systems that you can plug and play into your business and start using right away. Opportunity or mistake number 5 is ignoring the power of 1% margin points all over the show. Pricing, positioning, sales, marketing, controlling labor, materials, subtrades, variations, contracts. These are opportunities for 1% margin slips across the board. They might not sound like a lot, but let's look at this spreadsheet. If we assume 2 identical businesses in terms of what they make, profit-wise, $800,000 in gross profit. They do the same contract sizes, the same sales conversion rates, and it takes them the same amount of time to price and sell a job. The only difference is one does this at 19% margin and the other does this work at 20% margin. The implication is that one business has to turn over $210,526 more annually. That's almost a whole month's worth of revenue annually that you have to do just to make the same amount of profit, all because of one margin point. If we assumed that gross profit was only going to come in at $400,000, we could halve this. One margin point equals $105,000 in extra required revenue annually. And this is the power of just one margin point, 1%. What could this mean for you, for your business, and what would this buy back or have an impact on your time and your profit if you could plug holes of just one margin point in your pre-construction and then in each of your jobs? So Johnny says it best. You can figure things out on your own, or you can surround yourself with those who have already done it. And those who have already done it have already solved the issue of these 5 big opportunities and these 5 big mistakes. Let me recap them. Confusing markup with margin. Remember, to achieve 20% margin, you need a 25% markup. Number 2, trying to scale lack of profits, poor cash flow, or low margins. You can't scale cows, fix your margins first, and then grow. Number 3, if you're the bottleneck and you're doing everything yourself, profits will slip through the cracks. You cannot do it all as a one-man band. You need to ask for help via process, via people, via systems. Number 4, reinventing the wheel. Stop spending months figuring this out on your own when builders like you have already solved it before. And number 5, don't ignore the power and let 1% margin points slip through the cracks. Remember, you don't get in business what you deserve, you get what you tolerate. Okay, so we've identified the problems. Let's talk about solutions. How do you actually price a job at 20% minimum margins and land those jobs even when you're not the cheapest builder? The answer is actually simpler than you think, but it requires you to understand some fundamentals about how a buyer or your client goes about choosing the builder of their dreams. You see, before any client chooses a builder, they need answers to 4 big questions. Who are you? Who's your team? How can I trust you? And how can you help me specifically? They need to know, like, and trust you as a person. They need confidence that your team can deliver. They need proof that you'll be able to do what you say you're going to do. And they need to see that you understand their project. Are you the right builder for them, for your custom home build, your renovation, your remodel, your extension, your addition, your granny flat, or whatever it might be? Additionally, they have 5 concerns that keep them up at night. Budget, timeline, quality, communication, and trustworthiness. Will this go over budget? Will you finish on time? Will you get the work done properly and to industry or exceeding standards? How will they know what's happening? Will you show up to site, or will you be hard to get a hold of? And then can they trust you to do what you say you're going to do? They've heard horror stories, the media's all over it. So here's what not to do, and honestly what most builders actually do. They get a call from a prospect, they race out to site, they walk around, they might say, yeah, I reckon we could do it for $4,500, love. And then they email a quote a couple of weeks later. The prospects look at 3 quotes, and then because there's no way to differentiate you from any other builder other than price, they choose based on price. And the builder who wins is usually the one with the lowest price, the one who's made the biggest mistake in their pricing. I've seen it before. Somebody missed a roof once. Now, here's what the smart builders do. The ones landing jobs at 20% plus margins, even when they're $50,000 more expensive. Before they go to a site visit, they send what's called a WOW information pack. It's called WOW because the client receiving it before they meet you should go, wow. Here's what one on screen looks like from our mate Tony. He's used the template from the membership site. Now, this WOW information pack is a glossy magazine, and it answers the 4 questions and the 5 concerns. It systematically goes through and includes your story and why you do what you do. It goes through your team profiles with photos. It goes through your process, and they can place themselves as a prospect on the process. Maybe charging for quotes or the professional services next. Maybe there's a build clean at the end of a project before the keys are handed over. It includes your guarantee, and the guarantee or professional promise would hit the 5 primary concerns that we've already covered. It would include case studies and testimonials, ideally addressing again those big questions and those concerns. Who's your team? How do I know that you're going to achieve budget, timeline, quality, trustworthiness, and communication? It would include an appendix at the end of things like rules of the game that shows how you are professional on site, maybe a quality control checklist that shows how you not only hit industry standards but exceed them to your personal standards. It might include your communication policy with an online portal or a weekly wrap method at the end of every week. By the time the prospect has read through this wow information pack, before you even meet them, they already know, like, and trust you. It takes them from cold to pre-sold, so that by the time you turn up for the site visit, you can take them from pre-sold to sold on your professional service or your preliminary service agreement. Look, here's the magic. When you educate your prospects and answer their questions up front, price becomes less important. It's not excluded, but the slice of the pie is diminished down because you've introduced variables other than price. Timeline, budget, trustworthiness, quality, communication. Who are you? Who's your team, your trusted suppliers, your preferred partners? How can I trust you? And how can you help me specifically? They're choosing not who's the cheapest, but they're choosing who's the best builder for them, for the biggest investment of their lives. Now, the reason I share the WOW information pack is because it's such a powerful tool and template that we use with our members. We help them get this done in days. We then roll it out over the 10 marketing pillars, the 10 by 10 marketing machine that we get our members to implement, and the TPB 10-step sales process. You can see the WOW information pack is right there at step number 3. It stacks together like this. It helps people understand how the whole thing comes together before the pricing for profit method. But let me explain a little bit more around this WOW information pack and how it was applied by one of our members, Simon, who implemented this exact system. Before he started, his gross profit margin actually wasn't too bad, 27%, but the problem was his sales conversion rate, 15%. And then he had to price a lot of jobs to hit his target turnover or target sales figure. But with the info pack, his conversion rate has now shot up to 60%, and his margin has increased as well to 44%, which is huge. And yes, this wasn't the only strategy that he installed, but it was one of the big needle movers for him. And because he took it from a level 10 to a level 25. The glossy magazine of his is there on the, I'm holding that on the right-hand side of the screen. And then he, for jobs under $100,000, sends just the magazine out. For jobs that are over $100,000 and he really wants, he sends out in a box. And that box is laser engraved with the address and the project that he is looking to win. As you can see, it looks fantastic. It arrives before he arrives. The client goes, wow. And it helps to position him above any other competition, and it helps him to avoid competing on price exclusively. But what happens after this? Well, the next big needle mover I want to unpack is the presentation of quote as an action plan. Most builders send a quote via email, maybe a PDF with some numbers. The client looks at the bottom line, compares it against 2 other quotes, and picks the cheapest one. Now, here's what we teach with all of our members. Never email a quote. Always present it in person as an action plan. Look, it's not just a quote, it's a roadmap for their build. And you'll use this quote as an action plan or this construction proposal template that you can see on the screen to walk them through a timeline broken down by stage, how you'll handle variations and change orders, how you communicate with them weekly or daily. Who will be their point of contact? Will it be you, the owner, or will it be the site foreman, the superintendent, the manager? How will they do their payment schedules? Who will be the person in the office that they need to communicate with? How will you ensure quality in every stage? What will your payment schedule actually look like? And what's been included and excluded? This template that we use with our members is broken down into thirds. The first third introduces the people, the team, and it recaps all your 4 questions and 5 concerns. The middle third walks through the actual job and the project. If it's a $2, $3, $4 million custom home that many of our members do, it can sometimes be up to 60 or 70 pages long. If it's just a renovation or a small remodel, maybe a kitchen or a bathroom or outdoor landscaping, it might just be 6 pages. But that same middle part is where we break the job down by stage. And then the third and final third looks like what's included, what's excluded. It has a deadline and a time of how long the quote is valid for. It covers what we will do as the builder and what they will do as the client. And it makes sure that they have an understanding of what they need to do to secure their place in the build schedule and what deposit they need to place to secure that and the next step with you. Going through this process of the WOW pack, presentation of quote, by the time we get to the price, it's not a shock. It's a next logical conclusion of, yes, of course I want you to be the builder for the biggest investment of my life. When a prospect says you're $40,000 more expensive than the other guy, you can confidently say, you're right. We're not the cheapest, and there's a reason for that. Let me show you exactly what you get for that investment, the systems that ensure we finish on time, the process that keeps you informed, every step of the way, the quality checks that mean that you don't get callback 6 months later, our guarantee, the award-winning work that our team does, and how we are going to deliver on the best building experience that you'll ever experience and avoid those nightmares that you've heard about from others. Most builders lose on price because they haven't given the prospect any other way to differentiate themselves. But when you educate properly, present your quote as an action plan, you win on value, not price. Take this example from Nate. He presents his quote as an action plan with a 3D printed home that they're about to build for their client. Phenomenal stuff, above and beyond. Can you see how this would protect or improve your margins by 1% minimum and allow you to reduce your required revenue by $210,526? Hopefully you can. Let's move through now, though, to the third part that I want to cover, which is right now how you actually hold on to profit through a job and you don't experience margin creep. Because if you go in at 20%, that's cool, but that doesn't mean you're coming out at 20%. There's so many ways that we can lose on our margin through a project. Controlling labor, materials, subtrades, variations, change orders, contracts, these are all pockets of margin erosion. Things like labor blowouts, materials can cost more, variations that don't get captured, subcontractors can go this way, that way, or the next way. Well, went in at 20 can come out at 12 or even 8%, sometimes worse. So here is what we want to do when it comes to protecting our profit. Step number 1, back cost in real time. This is non-negotiable. If you're not back costing in real time, and I mean weekly, then we're leaving things up to chance. We want to play the game like a game of sport, where we have a scoreboard and we can see how we're tracking against the competition, which is our forecast versus our actual. Let's say the subcontractor electrician comes in and is quoted $18,000. Are we being billed correctly? Are there any extras creeping in? Maybe we've forecast 80 hours for the framing. How many hours have we actually used? If you're at 65 hours, but you're only halfway through, you know that you're going to go over. We need to adjust and can adjust immediately if we're in a position to track our forecast versus our actual and make sure we update in our weekly toolbox meeting or in our daily stand-ups. Profit protection system number 2 is variations or change orders. Imagine that during electrical rough-in, the client mentions to the electrician, hey, while you're here, do you mind running some data cables into all the extra bedrooms and then a couple of additional power points into the home office? The electrician says, yeah, no worries, and 6 hours of labor plus materials. He assumes the supervisor knows. The supervisor assumes that it's in the original scope. There's $2,100 down the drain that never gets invoiced. Or the client chooses a different tile that's $15 a square more expensive and nobody captures it. These little variations add up big time. $500 there, $2,100 there, $5,000 there. Before you know it, you've given away $20,000 in extra and it comes straight out of your profit. So here's the system. No variation happens without a signed change order first. Not after, not we'll sort it out later, before. You need a pre-construction meeting where you explain to the client any changes, no matter how small, go through the office, we'll price it, you'll approve it, and we'll get it signed. Then we'll be able to do the work. This protects both of us. We then want to train the team on what to say to the client, and so that they understand what constitutes a variation, what is in the scope of works and out of the scope of works. We had this one member doing award-winning beautiful builds. He was giving away change orders and variations left, right, and center, though. And he'd racked up $43,000 that he had not captured. That's $43,000 in pure profit that walked out the door because he had no system in place. We teach our members to invoice weekly, not at the end of a job, weekly. So that by the end, the client doesn't receive an unexpected $43,000 bill to end the build. And there's examples of how you can adopt this into your business every single day in our membership community. Here's an example of a $500 variations administration fee so that it deters the client on the types of projects that these guys are doing. Or another member that managed to charge variations of $100,000 on a renovation that only cost $180,000. People apply different variations processes slightly differently. Ultimately, you need to apply it to your business for your unique situation. Okay, look, we have moved at pace today. We've covered a lot. Number 1, why gross margin is so important in your business. It's the number 1 most important number in your business. We've also covered the 5 big mistakes or opportunities that are keeping most members stuck when it comes to their profitability. How to land jobs at a 20% minimum margin going into a project using the WOW information pack and the presentation of quote as an action plan, even if you're more expensive. And then hold on to the profit through a project by controlling your variations and making sure you back cost in real time. Look, there's no silver bullets. There's only lead bullets. It's about combining all of these to make sure you hit 20% minimum margin. Look, if you made it this far, you're probably leaving massive money on the table, and this is a big opportunity for you. And maybe it's an opportunity not because you're not capable of fixing it, just because you haven't been taught how to fix it yet. You see, we see so many people come to us, they're fantastic, good builders, been taught how to be great builders, but not yet been taught the skills of how to be great business operators, stepping out of their trade and into the trade of being a business owner. Good news is, this is fixable, and it's actually fixable faster than you think. We have members who have gone from 12% margins to 20%